What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got 5 more extremely cool knives for you guys to check out. Some of these will be available. I will link the ones that are down in the description so that you guys can check them out if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Starting off here with number 5, we have the brand new RATI PLXE. I got really excited about this and still am. A couple of people thought, why is he getting so excited about this boring knife when I unboxed it? This is anything but boring. I'm gonna stand by my reaction to this. This is such a comfortable knife. I cannot stress that enough. I'm a big fan of ergonomic designs. Might be a little bit ugly to some people, but knives that are easy to manipulate or sort of second nature to manipulate and then have absolutely hand-melting ergonomics. I am a sucker for that. I also like locking systems and deployment systems that are different from what we typically see. This knife has an opening hole, which we see all the time, but the pivot locking system is RATI's own proprietary locking system. We have lots of knives on the market that utilize a pivot as a button, but the way that this locks up is RATI's own thing. Furthermore, given that the pivot is actually in the like where your index finger would land in the choked up position, it does have a safety so that the knife I couldn't say that correctly, so that the knife will not disengage while you're using it. I like that. I also really like that this is very obviously a RATI knife, and what I mean by that is it's not a typical build quality for this price point. We see nice knives at this price point for sure, but RATI typically likes to stay up there in the $300, $400, $500 range, and their quality shines through like a beacon of golden light. I mean, even at that territory where you expect really, really high quality, right? They still shine through. So for them coming in at about 122 bucks, this is very obviously like exceptionally well put together for this price point, which is much, much lower, but still, you know, somewhat pricey. I kind of like the seam construction back here. I think that's neat. The texturing and the, you know, heavy chamfering and light contouring on this knife all lend to the ergonomic comfort. It's also got left and right-handed mounting positions, and we have that beautiful high polished tumbled finish on the Nitro V blade. This is an awesome knife. I have thoroughly enjoyed EDCing it. It's a little bit tricky to get your hands on right now, but if you get an opportunity, I highly recommend it. Moving on here to number 4, I think this is slipping under the radar for some people, right? This is the VED Corgi V with the V anchor lock. Not everybody is super into, you know, some of these smaller, or some people would describe this as a micro knife, but it's another example of a knife that operates via a locking system that utilizes the pivot, but this is much different. VED's V anchor lock is definitely one of the stronger locks on the market, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube of this locking system being tested. There's a slab of steel that sort of fits into this rectangular area, kind of like a compression lock, but also not the same. It's really cool, and it's something that VED has you know, come up with and is doing on their own. VED, I would love for you guys to implement this in everything. This is really, really cool, and continue doing your own version of the compression lock, which is of course the top liner lock in as many knives as possible. But these are clearly popular knives as they tend to sell out. I think VED knows this, and I think they're working on manufacturing more, but this little V-Anchor Corgi is really, really cool. And you know, my issue with little knives is that they tend to not be the most satisfying to deploy, or like I don't have the most confidence deploying them because I'm holding on to such a small object, right? Like right there, slipping off the front flipper. But this little, you know, this little jimp back here, this jimping back here allows you to actually get good traction and flip it. So it's really neat. It's actually exceptionally strong for the locking system. And we have 14C28N for the blade, which is really, really good. Honestly, I think this is a great package for about 80 bucks if you can get your hands on it, especially if you like to carry more of a minimalist looking knife that is still extremely capable. I mean that. This locking system is very, very capable. I can't wait to see more from VED. Moving on here, one of my favorites. Oh my gosh, this has definitely dominated my pocket. This is the Knives Highin XL, which is a Gavco design. Much more expensive at about $275. There are so many elements of this knife that I love. I talked about this when I reviewed it. You guys haven't seen it yet, but this choke up position is beautiful. The combination of the choke up position and this little harpoon notch, or the sort of, I don't know, is it dramatic to say synergy? Probably, right? It's just, this complements the index finger position so well. It's so comfortable, even though admittedly, not many times I'm actually going to be holding the knife like this. It's just cozy, right? Even back here, choked back, as us knife enthusiasts say, right? Or standard grip, right? Whatever you want to say. Love that. Love the diamond texturing. That's a big thing with me. I'm always going to be attracted to that type of stuff. I also like the transition from the forward choil area back here to the primary index finger position. And I like how it's not blocked off by a flipper tab, which flippers have their own place, but on certain designs, it absolutely ruins the ergonomic comfort of it. I love that this is all open and it's a thumb stud operating knife. Absolutely incredible action. If you've handled any WE knives within the last maybe year and a half, they have definitely changed something. Their action is spectacular, and this knife is another great example of that. Thumb studs are placed perfectly to do a reverse flick or a forward flick, right? This is a Gavco design, and when they released the standard version of it, so many people said the same thing that they've been saying about a lot of knives that released in, it was like 2022 to 2023. It was like the year of the small knife, the year of the small plain knife. Everybody was like, excuse me, can we have a small knife with absolutely no personality and just stamp minimalist on, your marketing? That would be great. Can we get 17 billion of those? Yeah. And then everybody was like, oh my gosh, that kind of sucks, right? But that's not what, I'm sorry, side rant there. That's not what happened with this knife. It was the one that we got from WE, if I remember correctly, was just on the small side. And a lot of people said, this is fine, but can you make a bigger one? And apparently Gavco and WE said, yes. And they did. And it is awesome. It's so cool. This has this kind of glass blasted, or I don't know if WE calls it the silver bead blast finish. I love it. Such a cool knife. Absolutely wonderful pocket clip. It does ride on the texturing, but I mean, it doesn't. It looks like it rides on the texturing. There is, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, there's actually a little bald spot under there. No spot for lefties, which is a bummer. The clip is totally symmetrical, just like a couple more holes. It's probably nested, though. They probably would have had to carve out a little slot right here. But we see companies do filler tabs that are the exact same material as the surrounding material with the same flaming. In this case, it would be flaming and then, contoured and textured, right? So I don't know why they couldn't have done that here. That would have been nice, but either way, this is an awesome frame lock. And at $275, it's expensive, but I feel like it's very, very competitive, and it is such a satisfying knife. At about 8 inches, I think that's actually exactly what it is. So by my standards, this is a full-size knife. It's actually a little more. We're looking about 8 1/8 with 3.5 inches of blade. This is absolutely wonderful. Do not sleep on this knife. Moving on here, we have a knife that you have seen 1,000 times, but then again, you haven't quite seen this version yet. And yeah, that is that metallic thwack. I believe you'll get that because I've got 2 of these and they both do the same thing. This is the new large pyrite alt in CGRB and Artis Cutlery's new proprietary steel, which is ARSF2. You guys, I don't think have seen me unbox this yet, but they were quick to give me all of the details on this and what they, intended for it to perform like. So this is a spray form steel, much like their AR RPM 9. And they said the idea was to create a spray form steel that performed very, very similarly to 154 CM. I really like that. 154 CM is a very, very good, well-balanced steel. It's a steel that I have enjoyed for years, and it's also a steel that's been around for a very long time, but for good reason, right? It takes a good finish. It's got reasonable, not award-winning edge retention, but reasonable. It's very, very friendly to touch up. It's corrosion resistant, and it is reasonably tough. These are all things that you want in a good, relatively inexpensive pocket knife. I mean, on the grand scale, right? So I have done like very minimal testing on this. My test, the first thing that I wanted to find out was, does it at least hold an edge longer than AR RPM 9? And in the review, I talk about this more in depth, but basically I did 50 cuts into cardboard, all the same length, both with AR RPM 9. I had another version, actually it's right here. I had a large pyrite light in AR RPM 9. And I think it was this one right here that I tested for AR-SF2. But it was 50 cuts into cardboard with both. And if you've ever EDC'd AR RPM 9, which is a fine steel at the $30, $40 price point, but if you've ever EDC'd it and used it, it goes dull pretty quick. 50 cuts into cardboard, right, at about 6 to 8 inches in length. That will not dull it completely, but that will definitely slow it down. And it did. After 50 cuts, the AR-SF2 was clearly still cutting better. So that doesn't say definitively that it absolutely performs exactly like 154 cm, but it lends to the truth behind what they're saying is that it's definitely better than their AR RPM 9. Now, this knife comes in at $100, but given that this is a larger knife with a steel frame in their new steel, what it tells me is that in the future, CGRB and Artis and Cutlery should be able to provide this steel at near or under budget territory if they change certain elements like the size and the materials used in the frame, which is really, really exciting. Either way, right, however you feel about the $100 price point, because we definitely need more testing, cut testing and HRC testing on this stuff to know for sure. Either way, this is probably my favorite version of the Pyite that exists. I like the bigger size. It's much more ergonomically comfortable. I love this area in here that they've carved out and that they've textured. That looks great. It's also on both sides and it's not super aggressive. So even though the pocket clip rests right on top of it, it's actually really easy in and out of the pocket. On top of that, it is accommodating for left-handed people. You'll just be using your index finger back here. Be careful about choking up if you're left-handed because back here, the pads of your fingers will actually end up on that button. But very, very easy to manipulate. Really great blade geometry. This thing does cut really well. I really enjoyed cutting with this knife, just sort of shredding some cardboard boxes real quick. But I like this a lot, and I know that it's going to appeal to people who enjoy the same ergonomic elements and overall, you know, kind of blade aesthetic elements as me. So very interesting if you want to experience CGRB's new proprietary steel. There's this and a few other knives. I'll try and the link in the description I'll make it so that it'll go to everything they have available in this new steel because some of their knives are actually less expensive. So it's cool. Can't wait to see where they go with it. Hoping that they stay near or at budget territory with it. And then finally, actually another, it's very rare that I do back-to-back CGRBs for a 5 Cool Knives episode, but you guys are definitely going to want to see this. This is about to be in Kickstarter. In fact, I'm not sure that, yeah, you know what? I said this on a live stream. I'm not sure that I'm supposed to show it, but I'm going to show it anyway. They didn't tell me not to. This, believe it or not, is a CGRB knife. This is a titanium Damascus and mirror polished S90V Locust. Now the Locust has existed for a bit in CGRB's line, but they're about to start their Kickstarter for the Perfect Locust program. They've done this in the past, and I think it's beneficial because they released some really cool new models. Most of them, like there are 4 of them in the Kickstarter. This is obviously the most expensive, right? If you didn't know, titanium Damascus and mirror polished S90V is going to be very expensive. And the vast majority of people are not going to go for this one. But they have much less expensive and much less flashy, less pocket jewelry versions of this that are still sporting S90V. I think there's a titanium one with a fat carbon inlay and like a sand polished S90V. They got one that's solid copper. These are all less expensive. The nice thing about the Kickstarter is if you go in on it when they release it, it takes a little bit before everything's done and you're getting your knife shipped, but there's usually a hefty discount involved with this. So I'll link the Kickstarter down in the description, and I imagine you can sign up for email notifications and be ready to go for when it starts. But I definitely wanted to share this with you guys because when I unboxed it, which I don't even think I've uploaded the unboxing yet. I know my schedule's all over the place, but I just really, really like these special edition Artis and cutleries with the mirror polished blades. To this day, I can tell you guys right now, Artis and Cutlery and CGRB is absolutely 100% without a doubt releasing the least expensive true mirror polished super steel blades in combination with Damascus, which sounds very, very specific, but it's really not. There are other companies kind of combining this stuff. Sometimes either the price is higher or their mirror polishing isn't really mirror polish. Like the closer you look at it, the more that you realize it's not actually a true mirror. This is a freaking mirror, guys. This is a mirror finish. I mean, I've got custom knives, multi-$1,000 knives in these finishes, right? It's amazing. Now, my guess is the reason that they're able to do this is because they've found a way to mirror polish these blades by machine, which is fine, right? If you've streamlined the process and you can pass the savings on to the consumer, then great, right? I mean, it still takes quite a bit. It puts a lot of wear and tear on a machine to mirror polish an S90V blade. That's not a rub a magic lamp and poof, right? Let's mark it up 10,000%. No, it still takes a lot of work. Titanium Damascus, expensive material, definitely expensive to process. So even though this is made in China, it's still going to be pretty expensive. But versus the competition, which admittedly a lot of the custom knife makers are doing that by hand, right, or by much more manual process, oh my goodness. The price difference is insane. So I like that CGRB and Artis and Cutler is finding a way to do this and get the price down, not too inexpensive, but definitely less expensive than what we've seen this stuff at, you know, in the past. This has their button lock in combination with, it's essentially a secondary plunge lock, which is fine. It will help you not accidentally disengage it while you're using it, but it should not be looked at as a, you know, any type of extreme locking system. A lot of people are not going to like the thumb disc on this knife, but I like it because it has that really nice symmetrical look. I also love that this line went almost, see, because they can't do the cutting bevel on both sides. So this is tricky to do when you have something like this. Sorry, I'm getting excited and spitting on it again like I usually do. It's a nearly like perfectly down the center line, but it's so close. It's like a long or like a deep bayonet grind. But that line is so perfect and goes right to the edge of the cutting bevel, and that cutting bevel almost perfectly meets at the tip, which it's impossible to do exactly to center unless you have a cutting bevel on both sides. So I really was impressed by the precision of CGRB. This is the nicest CGRB knife that I've ever seen, because I believe past projects where they've done this, it's been Artis and Cutlery. So pretty cool. Please make a big one. Please, CGRB, make an 8.5 to 9 inch version of this and do Damascus and mirror polishing. I love these projects. I think they're so cool. But the one thing that these perfect whatever Kickstarter programs, the one thing you guys are missing is doing a big boy. You've got some small to medium sized ones in there. Beautiful. Do a big one. Do a big old folding sword just for us who like that stuff, right? I promise you it'll do well. Anyways, really cool stuff today. So we have the CGRB Perfect Locust in the Damascus and mirror polished S90V. We have the new CGRB Pyite Alt, the large Pyite Alt in the new proprietary ARSFO steel. Next up, we have the Knives Highin XL. Next up, we have the oops, got to make sure it's the right way. We have the VED Corgi with the V anchor lock as the Corgi V. And then the highly recommendable RATI PLXE. That's going to be it today, guys. Links in the description. Can't promise everything's available. Some of this stuff might be gone. You have to watch for it. Some stuff you're going to have to wait for. But I wanted to bring it all to your attention. Thanks again for watching. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.